March 22nd, 2021. I would like to call to order the Education Operations Committee meeting of the Wausau Board of Education. Agenda item 2, we need to approve the minutes of February 22nd, 2021. I am seeking a motion to approve the minutes of February 22nd, 2021. Okay, that is a first by Beth Martin, a second by Lance Trollope. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is public and student comment. And nobody is signed up for public comment, and also there have been no written public comments submitted since the last meeting. Okay, at this time we are going to have the Leader in Me update. This is agenda item 4. And the board is going to need to actually move down to the front and space out appropriately so that we can see the video. So at this time, if we can all get up and proceed down to the spots.
Yeah, it's very strange to see you guys down here. Yeah, every meeting should be like this. Good evening, Wausau School Board and parents and community. Thank you for being here tonight to listen to our Leader in Me presentation. My name is Angie Lloyd. I'm the Director of Pupil Services, and this is Julie Omikin, and she is our RTI specialist in the district. So we have mentioned Leader in Me multiple times throughout the past 2 years. We were hoping to implement Leader in Me this school year, but the pandemic had other plans for us. So we had to postpone multiple times, which ended up being a good thing. So I feel like everything kind of happens for a reason. And I hate the silver lining talk, but I feel like this is one of the silver linings of the pandemic. We get to roll it out slower than we had initially planned on doing, and I think that's going to be a very positive thing for the Wausau School District. So Leader in Me is a program that we are going to be implementing district-wide. We have never implemented a program district-wide K through 12 before. So this is a very unique program, and we are the first school district in Wisconsin to implement it district-wide. There's some one-off schools down in the southeastern part of the state. There's also a number of other districts who have called us to consult about Leader in Me, namely Green Bay, Eau Claire, and Mosinee. So we know there's other districts in our area that are interested in it, and they're watching us to see how we roll it out. So I'm gonna let Julie introduce Leader in Me, and we'll kind of be bouncing back and forth telling you about it.
Thanks, Angie. Thanks, everyone, for allowing us to share this thrilling journey that we are on with Leader in Me. So first of all, we want to talk about what is Leader in Me. And when we think about the whole idea of Leader in Me, we think about it in terms of how we can use a process or a format with all of our students in the Wausau School District to help them grow in their leadership abilities. And when we think about that whole idea of leadership, we think about it really in 2 ways. We think about building those leadership skills to be successful in oneself. So thinking about it in terms of understanding how to set a schedule, understanding that you make commitments in life and achieving those commitments, going to work on time, getting to school on time, all of those pieces within themselves. That's called the private victory, which Angie's going to talk about in a little bit. And then we look at the piece within leadership where you're working with others and being successful when you are working in school or in life or at work or at home, and how you can be successful with your leadership abilities and working with others. And the amazing thing with Leader in Me is we don't just look at that piece of that leadership within just themselves and with others, but then building on a bigger picture. So when we think about Leader in Me, it's also that culture, of that positive culture that we build within our system, and then the piece of academics as well. And we're going to talk a little bit about the whole piece of goal setting and how important that is going to be with our students to set academic and behavior goals to help them really grow their leadership. And to help you get a better idea and understanding of Leader in Me, we have a short video that Cassie is going to put up in just a moment that will help you just get a better understanding and a more of a flyover about Leader in Me.
All right, so as you can see, it's all about building the character in students. We're going back to basics. So what this program does is it uses the 7 habits of highly effective people. One of the reasons that we chose this program is because businesses often know that language because they've often worked with Covey, and their employees know about the 7 habits of highly effective people. We're taking that down to 5-year-olds. So 22 years ago, an elementary principal down in North Carolina asked Covey that. He said, do you think 5-year-olds can learn the 7 habits? He said, why don't you go ahead and try? And she did. And what she found was it worked out pretty amazing for her students in her school. And from that time, it has now spread to over 5,000 districts in the entire world. So it's a tried and true program that has worked for many places over the last 22 years. And really, when we're working on the 7 habits, this is a graphic you're often going to see with the 7 habits when we're speaking about it, but it's teaching kids to be independent and then be interdependent. So we know that they need to get those foundational skills to be independent before they can work well with others. And then around all of the 7 habits is habit 7, which is sharpen the saw. Sharpen the saw is something that we can all use lessons on, especially this year, but really what that's talking about is balancing yourself and making sure that you're taking care of your own needs before everybody else's. And this is just a picture to remind us what our kids are coming to school with every day. So this is a universal program. All of our students will be taught the 7 habits of highly effective people explicitly at every level. But we do need to remember, we have kids coming who are going to math class. They have all these things on their shoulders. Homelessness, hunger, many things that a lot of people don't have to struggle with, a lot of our kids do. And they're going to learn the 7 habits along with everybody else so that they can reach their potential by the time they leave us.
So when we think about the framework and how the resource works and how the instruction is going to work with our students K through 12, it's based on a model called See, Do, Get. And it starts with teaching something called the paradigms. And there are 5 separate paradigms, and I'm going to talk about those in a minute, where we look at and we identify the specific things that we want our students to understand. And then from there, once we work through those paradigms, then we go into that do part, where we're looking at building leadership skills and helping with academics and building those really foundational pieces to help students be successful within themselves and then with working with others. So if you look at the next slide, these are the core paradigms that we talk about. And this is where we start. And we help students see these pieces within themselves. Everyone can be a leader. Everyone has genius, meaning everyone has a strength or strengths that we can build on. We know that change starts with me, so we'll help students understand that they need to be responsible and accountable and really understand those core pieces of being successful. We look at how all of our staff, and that's really an exciting piece with Leader in Me, is we are going to be able to train all of our Wausau School District staff in the 7 habits and understanding that, so then all of us can work together to help empower students. So it will be food service people who will be trained, so they will be able to understand the 7 habits and help students understand that process when they see them in the lunchroom, for example, all the way to the 9th grade algebra teacher. So it's really an amazing and exciting process that we are going to be able to put into our system. And then finally, developing that whole person, and it fits perfectly with our strategic goals of Whole Child, Whole Wausau. When we think about our system, obviously we want to put pieces in place that help assess our system. And within Leader in Me, there is a survey system that we will use with families and with children and with our staff called the MRA, and it's called the Measurable Results Assessment. And how it works is each spring, there is a list of survey questions that we will provide to these different groups, and it will help us monitor our system to see what is working. And in fact, we just started looking at some of the collection that we're going to be doing with this survey information, and then we will be looking at it in terms of the buildings and then across the district to see where are we at in terms of leadership. Where are we at in terms of academics? Where are we at in terms of culture? And so that's really going to help us understand what we need to celebrate, what we're doing great here in the district, and then things that we want to move forward in. And we are going to start this in May, and we were just talking about it earlier today with our Leader in Me coaches, so it's really an exciting piece. And when we think about, if you want to go to the next slide, Cassie, if you think about what we're going to be looking at within those measurable results, there are going to be specific questions that focus in on those 3 areas. So it's going to be the students, the staff, and the families are going to see questions about leadership, about culture, about academics. There's going to be questions that relate to student behavior. There's going to be questions that are going to be looking at attendance. There's going to be questions that are looking at student engagement, opportunities for leadership for our students. So this is a really great tool that we are going to be able to use, not only just to assess how Leader in Me is working, but in a bigger picture when we can compare it to student data as well. Because a true measure of an effective system is looking at survey data in comparison to student achievement data.
All right, so how did we get here? Well, in 2017, the DPI put out SEL competencies, similar to some standards in academic terms. So we went upon a vetting process involving people from every single level in the school district, teachers, paras, administrators, to really find a program that was going to be comprehensive and work for all of our students. We wanted a program with goal setting and one with some teacher autonomy, so the teachers could have some choice in how they were teaching these skills. We wanted a program, and I spoke to this earlier, that employers could relate with and that would really give those skills to students that employers are telling us that some of the kids coming out of our school system and area school systems aren't coming out with right now. We also wanted something that was going to be a framework for us, not only just work on behavior, but really work on behavior and academics at the same time, and really something that would empower all students. So at this time, I'm going to invite Chris Nyman up so he can speak to professional development. Professional development is a huge part of this. Right now, none of our staff are trained, and our objective is to get every staff person trained in the entire district.
Thanks, Angie. Thanks, Julie. So when Angie referenced earlier sort of the silver lining in terms of this implementation, and we really did get an entire year of time. When we made the decision and the pandemic required us to delay the implementation for a year, we really took advantage of this opportunity. We really seized the moment to capitalize on the adult learning component of this implementation, which really kind of sets it apart from other resource implementations we've done in the past. There is a significant adult learning component, and I would like to just highlight a couple bullets on the slides there that you see. The first 2 really kind of foreshadow the work that's coming, recognizing that you all play an integral role in this implementation and supporting it for staff across the district. We're currently in the process of securing a trainer and a date to offer a summer board workshop focused on Leader in Me and our implementation. We've currently secured trainers for this summer for all certified and non-certified staff to be trained on the 7 habits of highly effective people. For most staff, that will occur on August 30th and 31st. Those 2 days are already reserved days for professional learning across the district. Taking advantage of the gift of time that we've been given, we did also, throughout the course of this year, we went back and all staff at weekly faculty meetings with support from leadership and Leader in Me coaches have been focused on kind of the self-reflection and paradigms that you heard Angie and Julie mention earlier that really will be vital in terms of the success of this implementation moving forward. And going back even a little bit further, we really did offer a consistent focus on the implementation rooted in those 7 habits. So we created panel discussions that included both support and certified staff members, which kind of broke the Leader in Me text down chapter by chapter and really created a foundational understanding of those 7 habits so that we were really creating school environments that were conducive to practicing those 7 habits when we welcomed students back in the fall of 2021 and we were really in full implementation. So that's currently the status of professional learning. I feel like there's been a lot happening, kind of getting us to this point, and we've got a lot of balls still kind of in the air in terms of planning, but we recognize the importance of the adult learning component and have been offered the ability to offer a lot of additional time to focus on that up to this point. So I'm not sure who's doing next steps. Is that you?
And next steps. This program is going to be continuous learning for a long time. I have the next 3 years kind of laid out right here. There will be more put into that, but we don't want to overload staff to begin with. So we want to kind of take this slow. Julie was great. She did an SEL newsletter this last year, so when the pandemic began, and this whole school year, to get elementary teachers really involved in teaching those SEL components. So this won't be a huge reach for them. This isn't going to be something brand new in the fall. We really want to take this out to the community. We're having a professional video made about what we're trying to do with Leader in Me, taking it out to our community partners. We are also going to offer the training to a number of our community partners. We'll have them come and do 7 Habits training with us in August. And then really that first year, we're looking for staff to teach, model, and reinforce the 7 Habits in whatever content area they teach. So that's our goal for next year. We feel like there's a lot of excitement going around that now, and we really do think that is because we held off a little bit during the pandemic too. So I'll give you guys a few minutes to come back up front. We'll turn this around and then you can ask questions if you have any.
Well, thank you for that presentation. This is really exciting. Do any board members have any questions? Jane?
I have some questions. I'm concerned, and this goes back to even when we talk about closing the achievement gap, we talk about all our students for business, and we know that that's not true. Because we know we take all children because we're a public school, and we have children that just their basic needs every day is all they may be able to achieve. And I think when we talk in generalities and say all, we invite the naysayers to attack us. This is our goal, to get as many children to do their best with this Leader in Me. I'm just concerned that when we talk about all, that we are giving a false impression.
Yeah, and I get where you're coming from with that, Jane. So the 7 Habits, the first one is be proactive. You can apply be proactive to really anything. So if you're looking at a child like that picture where they're coming with homelessness and they're coming with hunger and all those other things, or their own disabilities, yep, that can be tailored to any child to be proactive. But it takes the adults who know how to be proactive and how to model and teach that to kids to be able to shape it so it meets that child's needs. So I'm thinking even of like a medically fragile child. There are things that that child can be taught to be proactive with. So though we're not teaching every child to be proactive in the same way, it's teaching that every child how to be proactive in the way they need to be proactive. So it can be tailored to any level, really, that it needs to be tailored to.
I understand that. It's just that public education has been under such attack lately that when we promised the moon and then we don't deliver, then we're a horrible
Yeah.
entity and we should be
Yeah.
gotten away with it. And I think it's just once in a while just to mention, every child can get something out of this. You know, every child isn't going to start a business or whatever. They're going to develop their talents.
Yeah.
And that everybody will get something, but everybody isn't going to grow up to be a Apple creator or whatever.
And I think that's why, you know, it's important to emphasize that one paradigm that we spoke about where everyone has genius. It doesn't mean that everybody is a genius or that every person is going to run a business, but it means that every person has a strength, and we need to try to help kids build on that strength that they have. I think that sometimes gets lost in the mix that there are different strengths out there, and it's our jobs as educators to build on those. So that's really the place we're coming from with this, but yeah, great points that we might need to help clarify with people along the way.
Build in value.
So, two things. Just, I do want to remind everybody, presenters and board members, to make sure to really speak into the microphone. It's a little bit more difficult to pick up here at John Muir.
Sorry.
And second, Angie, you mentioned the family engagement in year 2, and you also mentioned training for community partners, which is great. Do you envision training for families where parents and guardians can come in and learn about this and be able to reiterate and practice at home?
Yes, that's a huge part of this program. They actually have a family engagement training that we will put all of our after-school coordinators and a portion of our social workers and counselors through, so then they can train families as well. So there's quite a bit of training with this program that we're going to have to get through first. We're hoping that family component comes in by next spring.
Great, thank you.
So the current program that's being used within, I think it's elementary and middle school, and I've been trying for 10 minutes to remember the name of it.
PBIS, is that what you're trying?
Pardon?
PBIS?
Yes.
Yeah.
How does this impact, or does this impact that program?
Julie can explain that to you beautifully.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad you asked that question. Initially, when we started last fall, we talked about with our PBIS coaches, how does this work? Does one take the place of the other? And really, how it works is cohesively. So we think about in our PBIS system, within our buildings, we have a set of expectations that we have for in the classroom, in the hallway, our overall expectations for students. What we look at Leader in Me to do is to help use that as the vehicle to teach students how to be successful in that system. So the unique thing with Leader in Me are when we think of those 7 habits, we're going to be teaching those skills so they can be successful in their school system, in their home, and then our goal is, as adults, they can be successful in the system that they're in, whether they're working in a business, whether they're working, running a business, or they're being successful with running their family. So they really work well together, and I'm glad you asked that question, because that comes up quite often about PBIS and Leader in Me.
Thank you. The second one, I'm probably just not getting the mechanics of it. Can you share an example? If I'm a world lit teacher, how, if I get trained, you know, I'm going to be up to date and have all the latest and greatest 7 habit stuff. My incorporation of this into my day-to-day class or curriculum, is it intentional? Like, here's the 7 habits of highly effective people interjection here, or is it more casual that, like, I'm just more aware of what's going on in 7 habits back here, and I'm going to try to incorporate it into feedback, student interaction, etc.?
Yeah, that's another great question. So we think about it, and we talk about it being incidental learning. So let's say I'm a 9th grade English teacher, and I am giving a huge writing assignment that's going to be due at the end of the month. I can work backward then with my students and say, let's talk about being proactive, so at the end of the month this assignment is done. So in week 1, this is part 1 that you have to have completed. The second week, this is the piece that you need to have completed. We also talk about another habit that's called begin with the end in mind. So a teacher can walk through with students and say, okay, on May 30th, you know this assignment is due. Let's walk backward and figure out your plan to be successful so you get it done. So it's not going to be so much about, get out your book, we're going to teach you the 7 habits today. It's going to be all of those incidental pieces and that modeling, which Angie talked about earlier.
And then the last one, Angie, so the evolution, Angie, I think you were touching on this at the subsequent years. So if staff are trained August 30th and 31st of this year, what does that evolve into from a staff perspective in years 2, 3, 4, et cetera? Like once I'm trained, what happens then?
So that's a good question. So once they are trained, elementary teachers will begin to teach the content right away at the beginning of the year. So they have what's called the first 8 days, and they will be focusing specifically on the first 8 days this year, which is really around creating a community in the classroom and the school and building relationships with kids. So middle and high school, they're not going to be teaching it so explicitly like elementary teachers will. At the high school, it's going to be using that vocabulary daily with their class and doing incidental learning. At the elementary, we want it to be that way as well, but they will also have some explicit instruction. It's really meant to be infused where it naturally occurs, right? Otherwise, we're never going to teach the kids to transfer these ideas if it's always just, well, you do this habit while you're doing this, but then not for the rest of the day. Middle school will be doing lead journals, so they'll be doing it every other week. Theirs will be a little more explicit than high school will. So after the training, they will be doing some explicit instruction with the students. In year 2, they're going to start using what's called WIGs and PIGs. WIGs are wildly important goals, and PIGs are pretty important goals. Year 2 is when we really teach that goal-setting process. Some of the buildings are already there. I'm looking at Lance, and his wife is in one of the buildings where they're already there. They're already writing WIGs this year. So the beauty of this program is that it is tailored to wherever the building needs to be. So we might have one building who's just teaching 7 habits. Well, we have another building who's already teaching WIGs and PIGs, and that's okay, as long as every building is moving forward. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Just on Pat's question, related, is for new staff training. So this is a couple of years of training with two full days, August 30th and 31st. But what about new staff that are here in 2, 3, 4 years from now?
I'll begin to answer, and then Julie can take over. Yep, good question. So staff onboarding, because we are great at doing the first training, and then after that, it kind of falls off. So the beauty of this program is that they are constantly evolving. So they have on-demand workshops that we can assign to people and then have discussions afterwards. So that's going to be very powerful for us when we can't get all those people together at once. So it wouldn't just be the online training. We would need to have that discussion piece afterwards, and then they would have to train in their buildings with their building staff, because each building is going to be at a different level. Do you want to add to that?
Sure. And then we've already been in conversation with Chris about that whole new teacher training piece that we have at the beginning in August when the new teachers are hired, and implementing time within that week of new teacher training to incorporate Leader in Me in that. And that's just going to be part of our routine, where we train them in other resources and PBIS, all those other things.
Great, thank you.
I have a few questions. The training with community partners, I would really like to see this training done with organizations of color, if there are any in Wausau. I don't know of any, but if there are any, or if there are organizations that have employees or members of color, or live that different lifestyle. So that's what I would like to see, to get buy-in from them. And my other question would be, so when you do this training with the community partners, would you be open to suggestions to add to or to subtract some aspects from that training. If they went through the training and they saw, hey, you know, this really doesn't work for our district, or I see this as an issue, would you be open to adding or subtracting to that?
So if we train the community and the community doesn't like the aspects of it?
Yeah.
So the Leader in Me program is meant to be delivered as is. So as far as adding and subtracting, we haven't even, I mean, I would want us to fully implement it before we would even discuss adding or subtracting something.
Okay. And the reason why I ask is in tandem with, you know, having persons of color, persons that are members of a minority community be a part of this training. If they were to see something that they saw as problematic, that is what I mean.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
If they say,
Yep, so we are not going to go out and deliver the Leader in Me training to the entire community. What we are going to do is what we just did with you guys, where we're going to take this to businesses and present it to them. Because really, Leader in Me is meant to be a community program at the end of it. But certainly, if somebody would see something that would be a red flag to them, I would certainly want to know about that immediately.
right, but I guess what I'm trying to get to is they're not going to see that problem if you're not going to have community partners that are members of these communities be a part of the training. You understand what I'm saying?
So inviting the community in for the whole 7 Habits training?
Well, for this community, the offer training to community partners. So when you offer this training to community partners, I would hope that you're thinking that you're going to offer this training to businesses, organizations that have members or employees that are part of these minority communities in our community as a whole. That's what I'm trying to say.
Dr. Hiltz was going to.
Yeah, I was just
add
going to
something.
comment. I agree with you. We will certainly, you know, be inclusive in our seeking out of partners, you know, to share this with. And if I could add one more piece, the 7 Habits for Highly Effective People has been around for 30 years. I read it 20 years ago, and actually we're rereading it again as a district administrative team. And one nice aspect of it is, regardless of where you are on a growth continuum or ability versus disability, they're very universal skills. And so, you know, we're continuing to learn something new. So whether, you know, students have, you know, ultra high, you know, goals that they're setting or more modest goals, it will be applicable. And it's even helpful just in how you relate as a family, right? So there are going to be skills here that are applicable across all aspects of someone's life. So to your point, yes, absolutely. You know, this is something that could be applied, you know, in any lifestyle, and we will be inclusive in our seeking of partners.
Great, thank you. My also second here, this survey, you mentioned that you're going to start in May with the survey, students, staff, and families. How was May chosen as the month to start this survey? Because I think it's kind of odd because it's towards the end of the school year.
So
And
that's
why
our-
not you know, towards the beginning of the school year?
So it's actually the recommendation of the program, and I was a little surprised too, as well. The reason we don't want to give it at the very beginning of the year is it takes teachers quite a while to get to know their students well. It takes families quite a while to get to know the teachers very well. I think the reason that they do it so late in the school year is so you have time to build your action steps at the end of the year to implement right away at the beginning of the year. So you're trying to figure out where you need to put emphasis for that next school year.
Okay,
And
so,
we chose that part of May because we have a number of other surveys that we also send out. We don't want to bombard people and bog them down.
okay, so that would be May of this year, not,
Yes.
not the next school year, okay. I just kind of see that as kind of problematic because it's not a secret that this year has been very contentious, and I just don't want those surveys to come out very negatively. So, but, you know, start in May, you know, keep that in the back of your mind.
And, you know, we will put a disclaimer on it because we all know this year looks different and we know that data isn't going to look like a normal school year. So to make people feel better about it, we will put out that disclaimer that we know the data won't look like what other years might look like.
Thank you.
And so Angie, the surveys, these are created by Leader and Me, correct?
Correct.
Is there a way to tweak questions if need be, considering the pandemic instruction, the pandemic year?
Yeah, that's a good question. We actually just got done with one of our Leader and Me coaches meetings, and they had that same question. So we're going to get in touch with our rep tomorrow to see if there is a way to tailor them.
Thank you.
I don't have
I
a,
have a question, but I do
Go
have
ahead.
a comment. Did you want to go first, Jim? It seems like there's a big emphasis on climate and culture within the classroom, and that would be spreading across the district. Am I right about that? That you're creating a specific positive climate and culture for growth and having
Yes.
kids not be afraid to fail,
Yes.
and that's an important piece of this whole training.
Yep,
correct?
and goal setting will be across the district. The climate and culture piece will be across the district. Teaching those leadership skills will be across the district. The adults talking to one another in Leader and Me terms will be across the district.
I think that climate and culture piece could be really powerful. And it would be interesting to see what happens after people start using this for a while.
You'll have to come back to a board meeting and see how it's working, Beth.
I could almost piggyback off of that, Beth. I mean, first of all, I'm glad you slowed things down this year to really look at things because of the fact that it's been such a strange year. I've looked at this program a few years ago, and what I liked about it, and this, like I said, there's no question here, just a comment about the positivity of Leader and Me and talking about leadership. Covey is a good one to look at to begin with, and you've done that. The leader, everybody can be leaders, and to implement and to really encourage young people to come forward as leaders is very important because it leads into everything with entrepreneurship and moving people into the construction world. It just ties together. And so what I like about the program is you're not teaching a curriculum here parallel to the content curriculum here. It melds together and it helps within an English classroom or a health classroom. Those things can be helping one another and having the students be leaders within the classroom. So and my comment is I like the idea that we're starting to teach some soft skills that I think we have missed for about a decade now. So thank you.
And I was going to add to that, I'm so glad that the executive functioning portion seems to be a really key part of this. And it's something that I don't think has been done well over the years. And this is going to address it directly. I think that's a great plus. But I have a couple suggestions. First of all, I think we should contact our feeder colleges from where we get most of our teachers and let them know that this is the program we're going to do. And also, when people come and want to be interviewed and work here, that they are told up front that this is a good book to read, Leader and Me, just so that they can come with some knowledge on their own and then come and, when they get hired, they just learn how we do it here. It's not something completely new.
great suggestions. Thank you.
Okay, it looks like that's the end of board questions. Thank you so much, Angie and Julie, for your presentation. This is very exciting for our students, staff, and community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to agenda item 5. We have the middle school math resource adoption. This is an action item. Dr. Rauscher and members of the mathematics specialist team are going to present some findings and their recommendation on a new resource.
Hello, everybody. I have a challenge for you, teacher challenge. See if you can find the Leader in Me connections in the math proposal, because they're there. Now, thank you so much for letting us be here tonight to talk about the process. We do have a couple members of the team who are going to help speak, and then a larger group who are simply here in support. And so I'm just excited for you to hear about our journey, and we'll start with Mark Beversdorf.
Thank you, Jennifer. I would like to start by introducing our vetting team members and say thank you to them. And for those of you that are with us today, if you could please stand up and be recognized. From John Muir, we have Jake Anderson, Carrie Clement, Matt Dulski, who's in the back, Rachel Lohr, Matt Radickle, and Jason Smogoleski, who's also in the back. From Horace Mann Middle School, Lynette Anderson, in the back. Myself, Elizabeth A. Strike, Justin Poggle, Rob Phelps, and Jordan Sisson. And our Longfellow team, Darren Catlin, Julie Womakin, and Jennifer Rauscher. And again, thank you for everybody that was on that vetting team. So our process started in April of last year and has been ongoing throughout the summer and then the rest of this year. We began by agreeing on a process for discovery for our new material. We wanted to analyze the data to determine first what our middle school needs were. So we sat down and looked at the data to figure out why do we need a resource, a new resource, why are we looking for a new resource. We created a vetting tool or a scoring rubric that we could use to take a look at our new materials. We generated a list of potential resources, and then we came together to score the 4 vendor presentations that we decided to look at. Throughout the process, we agreed that we had to come to a consensus on one of the resources, which we have come to a consensus on, and we're here today to make a recommendation to the board for that resource that we agreed upon. And throughout this whole process, we have been communicating back with our staff at both John Muir and Horace Mann Middle School, the team member or the math teachers that are not on the team. We've been continuing to communicate with them throughout this whole process.
So I get to talk a little bit about the process, and then Darren will expand on that as well. But we started with our touchstones. What were some of those things that we wanted to guide our work and guide our thinking? So you'll recognize Whole Child, Whole Wausau up there. Our strategic plan was a key piece of that. And not just the student achievement strand, that's certainly a key piece, but also looking at some of the pieces across the way, thinking about using resources well, and making sure that we're considering things like staff and student wellness are all part of the package of looking at the strategic plan. The image in the center of the screen there represents the math standards. And there are standards for learning and then also mathematical practices, sort of habits that we want students to adopt to be good mathematical thinkers and be able to use math well. So that was another key piece. And then the book you see there, Principles to Action, we did that as a book study. And actually, the team had that done by the time I arrived this summer, so I had to do a little catch-up reading. But it was just really a way to look at what do we know about teaching and learning related to math specifically. So best practices, the standards, and then our own local strategic plan really guided our thinking. Then when we came together as a team, and hint, this is one of the Leader in Me pieces, we had to make sure that we were really finding common ground. And one of the habits is that idea that in the interdependence piece of thinking win-win. We had to go into this process, try to come up with the best outcome for everyone that was involved. So that was certainly members of the vetting team, but also thinking about our students and our families that we serve, and people who couldn't be on the team with us but would still be impacted by the decision. So we started with some beliefs, and we said, well, if our belief is that all students can learn, we agreed that is our belief, and our goal is that we want all of our middle school students to leave middle school ready for algebra, then we had to find a resource that would support us in doing all the different bullets that you see there. And so some of that information came from the teachers' experiences with what they have seen work really well for students. Some of it came from our research, some of it came from data that we looked at within our district and elsewhere. But so we got a giant sort of checklist that we agreed on, yes, these are the things that we want a resource to help us do. And then we got into some additional considerations. Team members switch. I came in and asked questions that sent us all in all kinds of different directions as I was trying to learn and figure out where I fit. And that's just part of the process. Things are messy. But we really kind of dug in about student learning, and what I was hearing, and I think what the team agreed on, is that the resource we have right now wasn't meeting the needs of all of our students in the way we thought a resource could, or the way we wanted it to. So we had some conversation about, well, do we keep the resource we have for some students and maybe look at a different one for other students, and ultimately decided after a lot of discussion and back and forth, no, we were gonna look at one common resource because we really wanted coherence. We wanted to come together, and that allows for collaboration among the staff, and that alignment supports students and their learning. And so that was a difficult part of the process, but we did decide that's something we wanted. And so that's what we'll present to you tonight, is one common resource. Instructionally then, we looked at, it's not just about the resource. We had to think about what is it that our teachers know and are able to do, and what can they bring to this process? Because if you've ever gone through a decision-making process, whether, for us this was vetting a resource, but it could be making a major purchase in your life, or any of those big decisions, it's rare that you find something that perfectly checks every single box that you want. So we had to figure out, well, what can we bring to this process, and then what do we have to have the resource bring, and might there be times where we need to supplement or add in order to make something really work for the students. So those were additional things that were in our minds as we went forward with this process. I guess the thing I would leave you with there, that part about the resource, is resources are lovely, but it's the teachers who are here tonight who really make the difference for the kids. So ultimately, our teachers know how to teach math, and they know how to teach students, and they know how to teach math to our students. So we just needed to find a resource that would support them in doing that important work. And with that, I will let Darren do the big reveal.
Thanks, Jennifer. Darren Catlin, math specialist. Good evening. The big reveal, it's already been revealed. The middle school math vetting team did choose iReady Classroom Mathematics. It's published by Curriculum Associates. This is their 2019 resource, and some of you may notice that this is the same resource that was adopted by all K-5 elementary classrooms last year. Was the first year of implementation for that resource. So during the vetting process, as Mark talked about, we did use a rubric to help us. And we went through these 6 aspects: teaching and learning, access and equity, curriculum, assessment, professionalism, and tools and technologies. And each member of the team, as we went through the 4 resources, gave each of these sections a score. Okay? And then when we were done, I tabulated all of those numbers, and when we got to the end, we noticed there were 24 different sections, and in all but one of those sections, the Ready Classroom Math resource came out on top in those numbers. And what that told us was, it met our expectations and it met our needs. and it fit what we were looking for. And we were able to come to a 100% consensus on this choice. 100% of the people on the team voted for this resource. A couple other things that I wanted to point out about the why. The Ready Classroom Math resource, this is what it's going to provide for our staff members and for our students here at the middle schools in the Wausau School District. Rich problem solving, meaningful discourse, a low floor, high ceiling. What that means is there are multiple entry points for our kids to join in the conversations and the discourse that is taking place inside the classroom. That means our high-level students and some of our lower-level students all have entry points into the discussions so that all students can be successful with the resource. It aligns with the practice and the Common Core State Standards. It is inspirational in many aspects and motivational for the kids. It does have many digital resources. As with the K-5 program, it does have the iReady component, which is a pathway. It's an individualized pathway. So the students take a diagnostic assessment and it places them on a digital pathway that is specific to their needs. It's going to provide us with much better coherence in our programs. When I first came here, we had a K2 math resource, a 3-5 math resource, and a 6-8 math resource, and now K8 is going to be all the same resource. So that's going to provide a much better coherence for our learners going from kindergarten through grade 8. And of course, it's going to allow for a great deal of differentiation within our classrooms. Jennifer?
Darren and I are just going to bounce back and forth a little bit here with these last couple slides, but ultimately we are asking you to support the team, support the staff, and ultimately support the kids by going forward with the purchase of this resource. So you can see on the screen, we're requesting an amount as an education department not to exceed $345,000 to adopt this for grades 6 through 8. This would be a 6-year adoption, so we really are committing for the long term. And another nice bonus piece to that is it saves a considerable amount of money. So you can see on the bottom those two pieces of the strategic plan, looking at achievement, also looking at really responsible use of our resources and bringing both of those together with this proposal. And then Darren can tell you a little bit more about what exactly that means, what students and staff will have to work with if we go ahead with this adoption.
So what this gets for our students is, in the student package, they get a Volume 1 and a Volume 2 book. So at the beginning of the year, the classrooms hand out a Volume 1 book. The teachers keep Volume 2 in their closet, so it's not going to get lost and or trashed between day 1 and day 100 whenever they need Volume 2. It gives the kids digital access to all of the materials. So what that means is the kids, if they go home, they don't necessarily even have to take their book home. They can go home and access their book digitally through their iPad. And with that, they can also access Spanish versions of the text, and it will read it to them as well. So there is that aspect to the resource. All of those tools that they have access, there are digital tools like Rec and Recs and 10 frames and things that are pieces of the program. They're all available to those kids, little counters that they can use as manipulatives digitally. Then there is the iReady personalized instruction pathway. This is kind of what I was talking about before. The kids take the diagnostic and then it puts them in their own personalized path. No two students' path is the same. It all depends on what that diagnostic determines are their unfinished learnings and what they need to work Also, when you purchase the package, and this is pretty much true for all resources, the teacher materials are free. So those come as part of the package. Also included in those dollar amounts were a PD package for us to provide professional development for our staff in the beginning of the year and moving throughout the year.
I think that's my cue.
That's your cue, Mr. Nyman.
Perfect. So as this vetting process concludes, this is kind of where the work out of my department begins in terms of planning for professional development. Jennifer mentioned this earlier, and it's absolutely accurate. Resources don't increase student achievement, teachers do. Resources don't close the achievement gap, teachers do. So as much as we're about to invest in teacher and student resources that Darren just talked about, we're also investing in the adults that are in classrooms leading the learning. So I'd like to just talk through some of what's coming in the next few months regarding professional learning to support the implementation. Beginning in April, we are partnering with colleagues from the Math Institute of Wisconsin, and we worked with these colleagues to support our K-5 resource implementation, and really starting at kind of that foundational piece, which is building those strong mathematical mindsets and really instilling that belief and wrapping our mind around that belief that all students can learn. And that is our starting point. That begins soon. That's currently scheduled for all 6, 7, and 8 math teachers and special education teachers on April 30th. Following that, we have scheduled 2 separate what we're going to call launch sessions that would be very similar to what we offered in June of last year. The launch sessions will be provided separately for John Muir and Horace Mann. At this session, we also provide teachers with copies of the print resources, or teacher manuals, as they're commonly referred to as. Trainers from Curriculum Associates during these sessions will also provide them with an overview of the online tools and resources that teachers will then have the flexibility to be able to begin to explore over summer if their schedule allows and if they're feeling so inclined. Following that, they will have a full day of training. This is a 7-hour training that will occur in August. And that really is focused on preparing to teach with the iReady resource, with the Ready Classroom and the iReady resource. It does build off of the foundational pieces or the foundational components that would have been provided at the launch sessions here in May. Beginning in September, of course, we will engage in full implementation with students. As Darren mentioned, that does include all 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students taking the same computer adaptive diagnostic assessment that our K-5 students take. We follow that up very quickly with support for the teachers to then be able to analyze that data and then use it to plan and inform instruction both for individual students and for small groups of students. Not reflected on the slide here, not reflected in the presentation, but we do have a district-wide professional learning day scheduled for January 17th of 2022. I didn't want to go out quite that far, although in my world, I'm out that far. And that will likely be a day focused on continuing the learning. I'm hesitant at this point to attach topics to that particular day, knowing that we will change that perhaps based on needs of the group that are identified at that particular time.
So at this time, we will entertain any questions that the board has.
It looks like the cost is $57,000, $58,000 a year-ish. How does that compare to the cost of our current math resource? I don't even know exactly. Do you have an idea how that's going to impact the education budget?
Very similar.
Very similar.
Very similar.
Yeah, I mean, you got 100% consensus. It's not going to sway my decision either way. I just was curious how it's going to impact your budget. So, okay, thank you.
One quick question. You answered the first part of it in terms of how this program synergizes with our K-5, but how does this mesh with our high school curriculum? Like, were there high school math teachers involved in this, or how? What are those connection points look like?
There weren't high school math teachers on the vetting process. However, we have middle school math teachers who teach algebra at middle school, so, where the students actually earn that credit. So I would say most of the high school involvement came from, like Darren and I were able to bring information and say, this is what the high schools are using now. In fact, we looked at some of the other vendors that we looked at are the vendors who supply our high school programs. And then our members of the vetting team and going back and working with their colleagues within their buildings, they were the ones who would then reaching out and saying, this is what we're learning, or this is what we're seeing, what do you think, and getting feedback. And Mark is one of our department leaders, and so is Carrie Clement, who was and they were both on the vetting team, so they also meet with the 612 math department leaders. I think we met 3 times this year, right, so far? And so we would have conversations there as well.
I just have a couple of comments. It sounds like this program, and you guys have put the work in. I mean, you know, these are just kind of superficial questions, obviously. But you have obviously touched on instructional differentiation and individual learning. But we do know throughout the years when math programs change from math programs to another math program, a lot of students get lost within that transition. What types of interventions are you planning on in case somebody does get lost? That might be a tough question to answer without having preparation for it, so I'm not holding you to it.
You're referring to a student who is not picking up on a particular grade level, how will we catch them up?
Correct. Or a student transferring from other districts coming into our district then. That's going to be a big thing as we gain students coming into the Wausau School District.
Right. And so, again, as we looked at this resource, again, knowing fully well that it's a resource that we want to rely on a lot, but it's not the only resource we'll rely on. Still looking at the the state standards that we follow, or our curriculum, if you will.
Okay.
And so this resource is touching on the exact same standards as our old resource. It's just providing a more kid-friendly playing field, if you will, compared to our current resource.
Okay.
So as these kids come in from another district, they're going to be coming in with the same standards as all kids are going from 6th grade to 7th grade to 8th grade. So we'll have that cohesivity, hopefully coming from one district to another. But the iReady piece is a really nice diagnostic tool to not only tell us where kids are at, but adjust completely to those kids. So if we have, for example, an 8th grader in my class who is not performing at an 8th grade level, the iReady piece is what is going to individually be working with those kids and helping to bring them up to that 8th grade level, along with differentiation that we do individually in our classes. That iReady piece will also help us out.
Good. Good. Thank you.
So this might be a question for Darren. I have some familiarity with iReady in the elementary level. And my question is, number 3 on slide 11 with the personalized instruction package, is this what, for instance, elementary students are assigned minutes
Yes.
on iReady? So they do their lesson, they're learning, but then they have homework where that kind of helps them on their skills where they're lacking, which is separate from the lesson in the day, just kind of something to keep working on. Is that what is included in 3B?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So the students will receive what, from the Ready Classroom Mathematics, from their textbook, they will receive a daily lesson. In this case, it's called a session. They will receive that, along with those daily lessons that go through their grade level content. So their daily sessions go through the grade level content and standards for their grade. Along with that, the students are expected to have 45 to 60 minutes per week on their pathway, their iReady pathway. So Ready Classroom Math would be considered like the print. The iReady is the digital aspect of that. So they are expected to meet that in the classroom, and that is part of their minutes of class time, of core math time, is teachers are expected to provide them with that 45 to 60 minutes worth of time. Of course, they can put in time outside of school on that or outside of classroom hours as well.
Well, thank you for explaining that, because I see this at the elementary level and I think it's very helpful. but to know that that would be an option there as well. I have to say, I think that we hear a lot about achievement gap, especially this year, and I wish that we would frame that in terms of opportunity gap. And here I see an incredible opportunity for our students, and I just want to thank you for the work, and the fact that there was a unanimous decision on this speaks volumes. So thank you very much.
I have a few things. First of all, I wish it was available in Hmong as well as Spanish, because that's our largest minority group here. And then I was wondering...
We have asked.
Yeah, I bet you did. And then I was wondering, these work texts, are these consumables?
Yes.
Good, because there are kids that can't do the copying.
Right. And what we find a lot of times with our littles, the teachers will pull them out in sections and only give the kids the sections that they need for a day or for a week.
Oh, that's really good. And then I was wondering, are these kids going to be able to, is this kind of working at their own speed then?
Yes, with the pathway, absolutely.
So when you have, like you were talking about, an 8th grade kid that's not working at an 8th grade level, what if you have an 8th grade kid that should be working at a 10th grade level? I mean...
So the iReady program only goes through the 8th grade.
Mm-hmm.
But as we know, even kids that may seem like they're at a higher level, they still have some misunderstandings about their current grade level material. So this iReady program would be able to allow them to do that.
Okay.
Otherwise, there are other enrichment activities and differentiation that would be placed then on the teacher as they are in any other classroom.
Because I know sometimes they do the high school algebra when they're in 8th grade, but it's just good.
Yes,
to know.
that pathway will still be available to students.
Good. Thank you.
I don't
I
have
have
a
a
question.
question.
Oh, go ahead.
So the digital resources, do students need to get online to access those, or can they be downloaded and then they can
Question.
do it offline in case they didn't have that internet access at home, or if it was just, just a bad day for internet,
Yeah. John, I think those are all internet, correct?
I did not.
They need internet to be able to access the iReady at home, correct?
The digital resources for iReady need to have internet access, but I believe that pieces of it can be downloaded. If a teacher knows that or a student knows that, they can get that material and place it on the device so that the student can access it when they get home. But there are components that require internet connectivity.
Okay. So then we should make sure that, if it's like, if we know a student doesn't have internet access, they get that hotspot or they get that extra support.
Do we gather that information when they register in the fall, whether they have internet at home or not?
Yes.
Okay.
So we are building that in, and it's part of a GPI across the state. So we've added questions to that, and we would have that information from the dispersal of hotspots from last spring through now. So we know who has hotspots and who potentially needs.
Fantastic.
Beth?
I had a comment more than a question. I just wanted to say, and other people alluded to it, I appreciate the really comprehensive, deliberate process, including a book study. That's pretty impressive. Before you even began, so that you've got this group talking about things before you start looking at the different programs. But I also am just curious, how unusual is it to have 100% consensus on an adoption?
Vary. But again,
happens.
this was a relatively small team, probably a third the size of the elementary team that we put together, just based on the fact that, there are only so many, math teachers at the middle school compared to all the grade levels of all 13 elementary buildings. So, a smaller team certainly helped.
Thank you.
All right, so this is an action item. I just want to check in with Jeff Lee to see if he had any questions. Not to call you out, Jeff, but I forgot for the last one. All right, hearing none. I'm going to seek a motion to recommend to the full Board of Education the approval of the purchase of iReady Classroom Mathematics as the curriculum resource for Wausau School District students in grades 6 through 8.
So moved.
Okay, that's a first by Jim Boucher, a second by Pat McKee. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
There he
Opposed?
is.
Abstentions? Motion carries 9-0. Thank you again for all your work on that.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to agenda item 6. This is the iPad fleet refresh and new lease. And John Uding will be presenting a brief presentation on this topic.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to present this information to you tonight. It's just 5 years ago that I was standing up here asking about the first iPad lease with you. I also want to say that I come in support of the iReady and Leader in Me, and this iPad refresh will support both of those initiatives. iReady at the elementary, but we refresh our Chromebooks, and that's what they will be getting iReady on at the secondary level. So this is really in support of all the great information that you saw before you with our other presentations tonight. I do want to say that when we were here 5 years ago and you had the foresight to approve a 4-year lease, we took that 4-year lease and were able to maintain and utilize that fleet of iPads for 5 years. So through our students' care and our staff care and the utilization, we got a 5th year out of our devices with that, so even though it was a 4-year lease. So as we begin to look at the things that are in this upcoming lease, we're really looking at bringing in 3,800 iPads. The first time we did it was about 4,200. So with a drop in numbers and some things like that, we're looking to bring in 3,800 iPads, 4K through 5. We are not giving iPads to individual 4K students. This year we are including an iPad for 4K classrooms that they can do some instruction on, and they can do some of their assessments with it also. And we are including 4K teachers with the iPads this time now. They felt like that was a needed component for their curriculum and their program, so we're building those pieces into this refresh this time. So you'll see that this takes care of all students, teachers, administrators, and we are including paraprofessionals into this refresh this year too. So there will be an individual iPad for any para within a building. This lease calls for 4 yearly payments. You'll see that they're significantly less than they were the first time. The first time we went into this, it was about $424,000 a year, and this payment here will be $279,000 for the 4 years. That is mainly due to when we went into the first iPad lease, iPads were $404 a piece, and right now they are $294, so it's $294. So less iPads at a reduced price results in that payment. They call it a lease. It's really 0% APR, and the funds are already within the technology department budget, and they're there and they're allocated for. So we're not seeking to take out a fund balance or anything like that. It's a part of already my department budget to support that. The other piece in that is we will collect back all of the iPads that are out there now, and we will sell them back to a technology reseller. We've got a quote on that. We will sell back about 3,100 iPads. We will maintain a few hundred iPads to refresh carts that are at the high school level and the middle school level. They have some sporadic use for them. So we will use some of the iPads that we collect back that are not quite 5 years old and refresh those carts and uses at the secondary school at no cost to the buildings. But then that 3,100 iPads will be sold back. Our quote has a guaranteed buyback minimum of $247,000. And all of that money will be applied towards the iPad lease that hopefully we are engaging in. So that means that the remaining 3-year payments would be about $197 a year. So we'll make our first payment, take the buyback money, make an additional payment, and then the remaining 3 payments are even lowered, down to about $197,000. So that's the overview of the lease itself. I do want to share some of the highlights from the last 5 years. And I know there's a lot of text on the slides, but if I could direct you to a couple of things. The 5 years, we've really engaged in collaboration in communication and critical thinking with kids, and teachers have done an awesome job of expanding that in the activities and the things that they ask their students to engage in. You saw some of those things over the years. I think last year you saw the Jefferson teachers and students who presented their projects around Act 31, where they still had the drawing, they still had the writing, but they incorporated their voice, they incorporated some green screen, they incorporated themselves into those projects. And there are many of those things happening across the district with students. We talked about individual pathways with iReady. These devices for our elementary students are one more opportunity for teachers and students to find the right fit for them and provide multiple ways for students to access curriculum. And if that paper and pencil worksheet is not the right thing for that student, the teacher has another tool and another resource in which they can make an accommodation for that student. We've been offering an Apple Academy. So you can see there that 72 of our elementary teachers have been certified in that, and they're Apple certified teachers. That's ELL, that's Title I, that's Encore, that's Classroom. We've had principals go through it. So it really is an all-encompassing group of people. That's led by Laura Morris and Melissa Pia, our 2 integration specialists. We have 12 people in that right now that are taking it. And we have a second year of that. A lot of people came through and said, hey, we'd like to continue this, and that's called the Great Learning Academy. And currently we have 15 people that have made it through there. So again, when I said you had the foresight to approve the lease 5 years ago, one of the highlights from that is we had the devices and we were ready to be fully responsive when we had to shut down schools and go into full remote learning as a result of the pandemic. Our staff was positioned for that, our students were positioned for that, and we had the ability to do the absolute best we possibly could under those circumstances and keep learning going with that. One thing that I really want to highlight is that middle column when we talk about Seesaw. That was a conversation at the board level last summer, I believe, coming into it. And I think there are some real highlights there, and that's one of the pieces we'd want to keep leveraging. That second bullet says there are 7,687 parents connected in the Seesaw portal. That means those parents are seeing what students are posting on a daily basis or on an every other basis, or as frequently as a student posts something, those teachers are there and notified of it and see it. They don't see a grade, they're more than likely seeing their student's work, hearing their student's voice, and seeing a video of their student explaining something. So it's another aspect of parent engagement and parent involvement in the learning process. One of the other things is, are these things being used? That second one, 28,000 posts have been put into student journals in just the last week. So in 1 week alone, our students are using the iPads to demonstrate their learning, post into Seesaw, and then those 7,687 parents are connected and have access to that. Its Learning is being utilized at a high rate too. You can see that there have been 15,000 logins into that just in February alone. Real quick, the iPads for this would be the 3rd year, will be fully implemented into summer school and are used in summer school and relied on by staff there. One of the things we've been getting into and will leverage in the future is student publishing. We're looking for students to be able to publish works and get them into the student libraries and be able to be checked out by others. We have our elementary tech mentors, so there's a teacher at every building that supports other teachers. And that last piece there of the innovative learners, there you go. That's that program we created 2 years ago where we were giving 5th grade students, or 4th grade, as they were going into their 5th grade year, more training and more understanding of the apps. And then they were there to help teachers create classroom projects, utilize the apps, And they also developed schedules and were there to help substitute teachers when they came into the building. They could help a sub get things set up and running. So just some next steps. As I said, we're looking at putting the Leader in Me student guides onto student iPads. So it's in a downloaded format and they can have access to that whenever they need it. They'll be able to annotate on it. They'll be able to submit work with it. But it's 24/7 access for students with Leader in Me. We talked about that continued voice in more publishing for students. One of the exciting things coming forward is this new fleet of iPads have the ability for augmented reality. And there are some neat and interesting applications that we'll explore in the area of math and building that into it. And then still continuing forward with collaboration and wanting to bring kids together to work on things and bring staff together in their learning to give them all the tools and the support that they need. So then that last slide is just the action that's requested. And I will tell you, the formal lease documents are not in board book right now. They're still under review by Quarles and Brady for us. And once we have that full set of documents, we will get them to you. The dollar amounts are agreed upon and the annual percentage rate is there. So none of that will change. It's just the negotiation that goes on in the background, but you will have those documents as soon as we have the fully prepared set for you. So the action there is just approval to enter into that 4-year lease agreement with Apple to refresh the Wausau School District fleet of iPads utilized at all elementary schools, and it will require a yearly payment of $279,000, $279,300 over the life of the lease. I'd be happy to entertain and answer any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you so much, John. I do have a couple of questions. Just going back to slide 3, you've referenced the number of teachers that have become certified Apple teachers, and it seems like a really high number, and especially the fact that we have in 12 of the 13 elementary buildings, there are certified Apple teachers. But what does that mean? Because this is different from the elementary tech mentor, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
They're two different things. Many of our tech mentors are. What that means is those 72 teachers have spent a year, so at least once a month for about 3 hours in the pre-pandemic format. They were coming together and each class or session was focused on one of the iWorks apps, Pages, Keynote, GarageBand, iMovie, accessibility features on the iPad, some aspect of it. They would take that 3 hours, they would learn about those, they would create a project, and then they would actually have to, or pass, an Apple assessment of their ability to show mastery of that app. And then once they completed that assessment through Apple, they got their badge. So they got the iPad badge, or not the iPad, the Pages or the Keynote badge with it. But it was a very collaborative process where they came together, had conversations, shared and learned, and shared ideas from their classroom.
Okay, and so I guess I'm still not really following what the certified Apple teacher, how is that, why is it important that we have one in the building? I mean, it's listed here, but are other teachers going to that certified Apple teacher for assistance, or other students that aren't that teacher's students?
Yes. So we want to have as many people certified in that as they can, because it's a deeper level of learning around that.
Mm-hmm.
It's that collaboration that helps them understand and build ideas. And yes, it is one more support that's in the building and can help the administrator and other teachers when they have questions about those apps, in addition to that tech mentor with it. It's important because we want to provide our teachers all the support that they wish for in professional development to really deepen their understanding of it. It's an optional activity, and it's one of those things teachers choose to be involved in.
Okay, thank you. I did just have one final comment, and it was about Seesaw. And I just want to thank you for listening to the teachers. We heard from a lot of them when the pandemic hit, and their desire to use Seesaw over its learning. And we can see from these numbers that it's really been used. And for any board members that aren't familiar with it, I can just share that I think it's quite a clean app. I'm not one that's particularly technically proficient, if you will. And I think it's a very user-friendly app, and I'm just thankful to you for listening to the teachers and making that an option for them to use.
Yeah. Well, and it was the teachers that really brought it forward and made use of it and continue to leverage it. We've looked and talked with Seesaw about what next year looks like, and they've got some really nice offerings and some changes to it. And so we're looking forward to leveraging that moving forward with it also. It's been a nice piece and a nice addition to the program.
Great. Any other comments? Otherwise, I'm going to move on this motion here. I am seeking a motion to move to approve to enter into a 4-year lease agreement with Apple to refresh the Wausau School District fleet of iPads utilized in all elementary schools. This lease requires a yearly payment of $279,300 over the life of the lease.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a first by Jane Rouge and a second by Jim Boucher. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 9-0. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. Agenda item 7. This is Project Relaunch and fall reopening of the buildings.
Thank you. Before we jump into this, I just want to say that was all so exciting. Between Leader and Me and the middle school math resource and the iPads, it's amazing what students and staff and families have access to that they just didn't 10 and 20 years ago. So I'm excited, had to share that. So thank you all for your work. Tonight wanted to, as we've been throughout the year, touch on Project Relaunch and also, kind of exciting, look forward to next fall, right? So obviously, 3 weeks ago, we made the decision to allow our secondary students to come back, all the in-person students to come back. And we know that in several classrooms that led to social distancing less than 6 feet. So we want to revisit to see what happened in those cases. So, and I'm sorry, Cassie, I can't see where you're at, but if you go to the relaunch update on secondary schools, that chart, thank you. So you can see here, I guess the summary is, first, we have had an increase in the number of students who are being educated in person. You can see the percentages there, where it used to be about 55 to 60%, now it's 65 to 70%. And you can see the numbers that shifted from in-person to virtual on the far right. So we did have a slight shift from virtual to in-person. Any questions on that first? Okay. Next slide. We wanted to get a little anecdotal feedback from staff and students about the experience in the first couple of weeks. And you can see here, we just tried to capture some themes. Students said, it feels more like school, which we like to hear. Staff did express some concern about the challenges in maintaining distance, and we expected that, and we're continuing to work through that. Another comment, this came, I can't remember if this is from staff or principals, but staff in general, more energy and noise in the schools, which I think is a welcome noise. And lastly, there are still some struggles with wearing masks appropriately, and again, that is something that we will continue to support. So overall, a positive change with obviously some cautions. Moving to the next, did we see, in the next slide, changes in COVID data? And while this is a little bit outdated, what we're looking for, of course, was there a spike? Was there an increase in the number of cases? And while this data shows no, I believe Mrs. Lloyd is going to give us some good news.
Yes, some good news. So as of today, we have 0 students positive and 0 staff positive. We only have 3 staff in quarantine, and we only have 46 students in quarantine, which is the lowest numbers we've seen since early October.
Thank you for that update. And lastly, in terms of relaunch, staff vaccines. I commented in here that all staff who want to get vaccinated are able to do that. We should finish by this week. I know I called last week and I was able to get in. I got the last slot on Friday. So hopefully we can get through at least the first shots this week. And then hopefully, obviously, then within 4 weeks, we should have everybody who wants it to have their second. It is good news, too, toward the bottom of that slide, that students over the age of 16 are becoming eligible. So that's good news at the secondary level, too. Let me pause there and see if people have questions.
Keith, I do have a question about students over 16 becoming eligible. Is this something where the district is able to have vaccination clinics at the high schools?
So we asked about that for staff, and and Tabitha, if I speak wrong, please correct me. We were not able to do that on site because of the storage requirements of the vaccine. So I am anticipating it's the same for students. Am I right? Okay, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Hopefully, once the Johnson & Johnson gets more plentiful, because that doesn't have the stringent, maybe then we can get some clinics.
Thank you, yes.
Yeah,
And
it's
it's
one
only
shot
one.
and it doesn't have to be kept in sub-zero temperatures.
Yeah. So I see Mrs. Gundrum step to the microphone.
I just had a quick update from Aspirus today, and prior to the March 12th beginning of our vaccine process, they had vaccinated 97 of our staff members. From March 12th until March 19th, they added another 252 to that list, and we have 38 individuals scheduled as of noon today. So the total of that is 387. The other piece I wanted to share was I had estimated about 1,000 staff members overall. And what I am aware of anecdotally is a number of our staff did go elsewhere and arranged for their own vaccine to happen at CVS or Walgreens or Green Bay or wherever it is that they went. And so I know that our numbers are significantly more than this almost 400 that's reported here, but I don't have an exact count. But I wanted to make sure that you had that updated information because that's as of noon today. So.
Thank you.
Great.
And obviously, we aren't tracking staff who choose to get vaccinated or not, so we wouldn't have that data. Other questions about relaunch? I think next. The next slide then starts to speak to next fall. And essentially, what we're looking for here, we know there's a lot of questions. A lot of things could happen between now and next fall. But we're getting a lot of questions from staff and from parents about, are we planning to reopen fully next fall? And so tonight, that's really all we're looking for from the board. So in the proposal here, we are suggesting, yes, we are proposing that students would come back full in person, 5 days per week in all grades. We will continue to have WAVE available, K-12, as a very high quality virtual option. I should call that online. They prefer it, it's an online option, not just a virtual option. I did put a little information here for parents who are interested. The registration's right on the website. Really wonderful support there, and Mrs. Seymour, who's the principal, is a wonderful person to work with. Then really come all the questions, right? What about the precautions? And you can see it really, everything depends on the state of public health at that point. So will we need masking? Will we need cohorting? Will we have to do distancing? We don't know. And that really continues into that next slide around co-curricular activities. We know how important they are, both our academic and our fine arts and our sports activities, and we want kids involved. Again, we'll just have to assess that. Our goal is yes, but we'll have to assess that based on the state of public health. Same with field trips. Outside groups have been asking, can we be, and we're starting to do that initially with groups that we are kind of close partners with, that we know will take care of their business, right, in our facilities. But we again, plan to open that up. And I guess that last bullet's really kind of a repeat from safety protocols. Let me pause there just for a second to see if people have questions or comments.
I think I know the answer to this, but I'm mainly asking you to explain it for people who might be listening. We have an unusual virtual option this year. That's going to change to our regular WAVE online option. And people should know that
Yes.
what we have this year through the end is only through the end of the year, correct?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, let's emphasize that. So if someone is in WAVE right now, they're experiencing an online system that was designed to be online. Teachers have specific training. The curriculum support resources are specifically designed for online learning. If families or students are experiencing virtual learning right now, that's very different. It wasn't designed to be online. And while our staff are doing a great job and our students are doing their best work, the WAVE really is very different. And if people are interested in online learning, I would highly recommend that they reach out to Mrs. Seymour.
I think that change is one of the reasons why addressing this now is important, because for those families who are thinking they may not be comfortable with in-person education in September, we want them to start looking into WAVE now for our own staffing purposes, for their time to look into what it is and ask questions. And so I think that change is a good reason to address this now.
Yeah, thank you.
I tend to agree, and I'm a little bit concerned that the kids that are in the WAVE program now have been in the WAVE program. Families have known it, they've been supportive of it, parents have been involved. It's a different kind of program. And if we say anybody that wants to be virtual is going to go into the WAVE program, are we going to be doing things that are going to diminish the quality of the WAVE program? Or do we have any control over that?
We do have control over that. However, what I would say is if there are fairly stringent expectations that for students and families to get involved in WAVE that they need to agree to. If they aren't able to do that, I would predict, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, I hope Mrs. Seymour is watching and she will text me if I'm wrong. But those students are highly unlikely to be successful. It's a whole different skill set, basically, and a whole different mindset. Much more independent. And so, but we won't, the quality won't suffer. I worry the students will, and so we hope that people make an informed decision if they choose to go that way.
So just for clarity, WAVE is asynchronous, and is it correct? I mean, there's videos,
Yes and
but
no. Yes.
okay.
And perhaps what I'm hearing are some interest and some questions, and perhaps we should have Mrs. Seymour come and speak to the board. She's much more knowledgeable than I am. Would that be of interest?
I think it would
that's
be
a
good
good
for the
idea.
public to hear,
Mhm.
because that's why we have to have this conversation for those individuals that want to make that choice and make that change. I do think that, of course, it's the goal that we are back to 5 days fully in person in the fall. I just question what this line means. It depends on the state of public health. This means that the district will continue to follow the health guidance, correct? So I mean, we don't know what it's going to look like, but, if there's some guidance from the CDC about continuing masks, for instance.
So I guess to your question, I would say we're going to monitor the situation. As you know, as we all know, we got a little ahead of the CDC when we allowed our secondary students to come back. So, we will monitor the situation, we'll have the conversation with the board, and we'll make the decision based on the information.
Sure. Okay, wonderful.
It just would be very useful for us to try to guess at now, masks and no masks, or 3 feet or 6 feet, or.
It's just a
or-
hypothetical.
Yeah, because we gotta get closer in time before we make those detailed decisions, but I still think right now it's important to send the signal out that the plan is 5 days a week and either in person or WAVE, so
Of
that
course.
everybody knows the plan for it.
Yep.
I just have one other question about the kind of the rest of this year. I've been starting to get inquiries from parents having made decisions regarding graduations.
Decision to
Regarding graduation formats.
Oh, we are. We have graduation scheduled. They'll be outdoors, and we have a rain date. I don't know the dates off the top of my head. We would not move them from outdoors to indoors, because of the situation. But yes, and I know too, they are working on an alternate prom kind of an experience as well. I don't know what communication has been shared, but that's being worked on at the secondary levels as well.
Thank you.
Kate, or Dr. Hiltz, do you envision some kind of committee that's going to be working on this over the summer, or no?
You know, we had the committee last year.
Right.
We haven't talked about a process yet.
Okay.
But we will consider that, yeah.
Okay.
Keith, what is the date by which parents will need to make a decision regarding WAVE?
So Jeff Lee's question was, what is the date that parents will need to make a decision regarding WAVE?
Sorry, thank you, Jeff. The deadline for WAVE has always been August. It's been very late. However, as Lance mentioned, we are now investing more into staffing in WAVE. So the earlier the better. I would really like it if people could make a decision by the end of the school year so we can get people hired, because some of our staff do both WAVE instruction as well as in-person instruction in our traditional classrooms. So it's a little more flexible, but the earlier we know, the better. I don't have a drop-dead date right now, but thank you for asking that. We will work on that.
I mean, I think this is great. Let's
Yeah.
let the community know that this is what the Wausau School District is doing. Well, hopefully, let's maybe take a motion on this. Are there further questions or comments?
Can I just point out one more slide? Kathy, I don't know if you've got it up already, that what practices may continue. It's just interesting. This is a list of things that actually have been enhanced this year. Right? So for instance, you'll see our IEP attendance by parents is actually higher this year than it was previous because of the ease of accessibility from the virtual option. Parent-teacher conferences may have a component. There's more of an opportunity for cross-high school curricular work now. Professional learning. We've been able to access people from across the state and the nation. I don't know about the world. It may have happened. But again, with that ease of time and the lower cost, I mean, that's been welcome. The virtual snow days, that I think is a healthy change. Mr. Uding mentioned the seesaw, and I've got that same statistic here. Wonderful connectivity for parents to the classroom and to the teachers. Multi-school collaborations, and we don't even know what other virtual opportunities might exist. So there are some good things that have come out of this that we want to make sure we leverage, and who knows where that might take us. But I wanted to just make sure I mentioned that before we took that motion.
Yeah, and just to that last point about virtual opportunities that could exist, you know, it's always terrible when when we learn that a class has been canceled, an elective at the high school level. And if, you know, maybe there is some opportunity down the road to develop that so that it can be a virtual option between East and West, and then that's more opportunities for our students.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you so much. So I am seeking a motion to move to open Wausau School District schools in grades PK through 12 in a full in-person model, 5 days per week at the start of the 2021-2022 school year.
So moved.
Everybody wants to, everybody wants that.
Everybody wants that.
I think that was a first from Jane Rouge and a second from Lance Trollope. All in favor? Aye.
Ooh, that was a hearty aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 9-0. Thank you very much for that. With that, we're at the last agenda item 8, and I'm seeking a motion to adjourn.
Oh.
No, that's actually a special meeting.
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
My fault.
Oh, no problem. So I am seeking a motion to adjourn. Okay, that's a first from Lance Trollope and a second from Beth Martin. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. This meeting is adjourned. Okay, so we also have...
Good night, everybody.
We also
Good night.
Thank you, Jeff.
Bye, Jeff. Thank you.
Okay, so we also have a special meeting, and it is 6:50 p.m. on Monday, March 22nd, 2021. I'm calling to order a special meeting of the Wausau Board of Education. I'm moving on to agenda item 2 and seeking a motion to enter into closed session to discuss authorizing to issue preliminary contract non-renewal notices as per Wisconsin statutes 19.85 1C.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and I believe is this a roll call vote, Kathy? It was a first from Lance.
Or Jim, whoever
Yeah.
you want right there.
Sure.
Yeah, roll call.
Jim Boucher,
Yes.
Kyle Lowe,
Yes.
Beth Martin,
Yes.
Pat Lateef, Jane Rush,
Yes.
Lance Trollope,
Yes.
Lee Webster,
Yes.
Tricia Zucker.
Yes. Okay, so with that, we'll move to the other location. We'll only reconvene if we take action in that meeting.
Here's your hat. Hurry, huh?